works. Oh, okay. It says it's being live streamed. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. Cool. So
Here we go. We're live. Good morning, everybody. This is Deanna with toolsofelnergyprotection.com. And this morning, Diana and I are going to start a new live here on Facebook and also a podcast, which I'll announce later. And we are two wonderfully witty women who have been through a lot of things as highly sensitive people and empaths. And there's so many of you that have been writing in and asking tons of questions about how do I feel better as an empath? How do I transform myself in this time, economic times where things are just really wiggy? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Yeah, that's a professional term, wiggy.
Yes, I love that.
And I'm going to let Diana introduce herself. And then if you have any questions, please put them down here in the feed as we go along, because we would like to know what questions you have about being a highly sensitive empathic person at this time. Diana, go ahead.
My name is Diana Himes. I am living in Charleston, South Carolina. I am I'm what I like to call a personal development coach. So I help you establish a foundation of self-love so that you can unlock your full potential and create your own path to success. And yes, I'm a highly sensitive person. I only found that out about 4 years ago. So it's been a wild journey since I discovered that, because once I did, it completely changed my whole life. And I bet in some ways it did the same thing for you too, Deanna, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely. But while you're there, can you share with us what was the first aha moment that you knew you were more than just a regular average person, that you had a high sensitivity? What was that first aha moment?
That first aha moment actually came at one of the lowest points in my life. I'll admit I was in my own private, I call it a mental prison, but some people can give it a 4-letter word, but so I was in my own, self-inflicted prison, and I was at the lowest point of my life, wondering what was out there for me in life, and I couldn't find anything. I was just so depressed. I barely could get out of bed. I pretty much laid in bed watching Lifetime movies and playing games on my iPad. And then I don't know what happened, but I found myself on the highly sensitive person website by Dr. Elaine Aron. And I took that test. And when I answered almost all of those questions and the affirmation is positive, it all made sense, because I always felt so different. I felt like I was too emotional, and I cried too much, and I just was so shy, and I didn't put myself out there. But seeing all of those things and the results of the test, that was the biggest aha moment of my life. And it made
That's awesome.
And it was that little trigger that helped me flip my life around. I went from being depressed, barely getting out of bed, to starting my own business and getting here to where I am having this conversation with you.
Wow, that's a huge journey. And I'm sure that anybody who's like either watching the live or watching later, if you feel that way, can you go ahead and post a comment down below, even if you're watching the recording, because it's important that highly sensitive people at this time where we are, May 15th, 2023, that we begin to understand that we have sensitivities that other people don't. And like Diana was saying, I can so parallel your experience with being depressed. It's like I came into this world to shed love and shed light and energy. And as an empath, you have spidey senses, and when things aren't working for other people. And so you pour yourself in that direction, and it's an empty hole. And then if you don't fill yourself back up, you feel depressed. Yeah. And one of the biggest things I noticed, and maybe some of you out there can identify with this, when you pour yourself into others, either through your own business, coaching, or anything where you're helping other folks, and then it comes your turn to need some help, it feels like there's nobody out there. It feels super, super vacant.
Mhm.
And that's when I started getting a mass amount of depression because, in my business, I do readings and clearings and healings, and I help others and I just pour that energy out. But what I wasn't doing was taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And when you don't take care of yourself, you pour it in, it can come out. But if you don't pour it in, it drains, 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 drains. And then you try to fill it back up and then it drains.
Yep. It's like the Energizer Bunny. You have to rest and recharge in order to fill yourself back up. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Yep, exactly. And what I really love about your story is that spirit or source guided you to see that one web page at that one time. And that happens to me a lot too, where I find just that one thing. And who knows, maybe as we go on with our broadcast and podcast, we're going to find some other people that are like, I so identify. So if that's you, again, if you're on the live on Facebook, go ahead and comment down here below, whether you're seeing it live or recording. We would love to hear your story.
Mhm.
Okay, so the next thing in our tasty topic is okay. So we're in that state of depression. So like it was hard for me to get out of bed every day, and I have a special needs child and I single parent. So all of that combined was just like I don't even want to get up. And
Mhm.
like you, it was like if I had time to myself, which wasn't very often, I was, numbing out with the Netflix and all that. And I knew it wasn't very healthy. So once you found out that you were sensitive and you knew you felt things other people didn't feel, and you processed a little bit differently, once you had that aha moment, what was your first step towards becoming more whole?
Reading the book. I read Dr. Elaine Aron's book.
I'll have to check
First
that
one,
one out.
that just is, to me, I consider myself a lifelong learner. So finding out that I was what they call a highly sensitive person, I had to find out more. There was no way I could just take that information and not do something with it. So yeah, the first thing I did was read the book. And then that book led me to other books and other books and other books and other books, and to where I started just call it healing myself. I'm a self healer. I I took what I was reading and incorporated it into my life, doing things like meditation, journaling, praying, talking to my intuition, my spirit, my inner spirit. Once I found her, what? Everything completely changed in my life. I stopped looking for validation outside of myself from everybody around me, my husband, my children, my parents, my colleagues at work, my boss at work. And I stopped doing that so that I could start finding it within myself. And the more I found it, the less I needed those validation from other people. How about you?
Yep, absolutely. So validation is a beautiful word. I love it because as a empath, if you're pouring love into someone, whether you're doing it a friend or a family member, and you're pouring all that into them, then when they feel better, you have this innate need to go for somebody to pat you on the top of the head and go, oh, good job. Thank you for healing me. Thank you for, of course, you don't really heal people, but you give them energy to heal. And then what happened is I did that over and over and over again. And when they would feel good, then of course they would move away from me. And this is before I started my practice. So
Okay.
unfortunately, this happened a lot in college when I was dating guys that just weren't whole. And I'd date them and, fix them up, not realizing it. And then they would feel whole. And then of course they didn't need me anymore. And so they'd move on.
Mhm.
And actually that was the genesis of my business, because after about the fifth person, in college that would dump me, I'm like, there's a pattern here. And when I figured out the pattern was that I was healing or sending healing energy to them or supporting them in their space for healing, then I was like, I ought to get paid for this because I'm not getting anything else out of it. I just get dumped. Which is funny
Right?
now, but it wasn't then because it's confusing to a young woman when you're like, what's wrong with me?
Uh,
How come all these men or young men are dating me and feel better, and then to add insult to injury, about 50% of them, once they quit dating me, the very next person they met they would marry.
okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, so that really made me wonder. I'm like, is there something wrong with me? Do I offend? Do I smell?
Isn't it funny how we immediately look to what we've done wrong?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, why do we do that? Why can't we look at them and go, they're lost, look at me, I'm fabulous, right?
Well, in my own personal journey, as many of the followers will know, um, I suffered from being raised by a narcissistic parent. And I
Mhm.
didn't realize that until about 4 years ago when I started getting therapy. And so one of my triggers was I wasn't parenting my daughter the way that I wanted to. I knew I could be a better mom to her. And then my business had hit a glass ceiling. And I was like, I knew that I could do more in my business than what I was doing, not working harder, but just doing it a little differently.
Right.
But yet, every time I would approach the different, there was something that I would self sabotage with, whether it was staying up too late or not allowing myself enough time to get things done. And that's when I reached out for Western medicine professional help. And I started seeing a therapist. And the second time we ever met, he said, I know you don't like labels, but I'd like for you to entertain the idea that your female parental unit is a narcissist.
Mhm.
I'm like, what? And
Mhm.
like you, it was that one book. But for me, it was a book called Will I Ever Be Good Enough?
Okay.
Uh-huh. And the lady
Interesting.
actually, I live in Loveland, which is near Denver. And the lady who wrote it actually lives in Denver.
Okay.
And that one book just jettisoned her like, pretty much overnight into the spotlight.
Mhm.
And so when Carol McBride wrote that, she was writing it about her own journey. And in the very beginning of the book, if any of the listeners buy this book or go look for it, in the first 5 pages, there's a test like you took, the
Okay.
questions. And I think questions are really pivotal for us because they get us to think when we're
Mhm.
seeking answers. And she has 33 questions in the beginning of the book.
Okay.
And so, even though I don't like writing in books, they're sacred. I took a pencil and next to number one, I wrote Y for yes, or N for no, or a question mark for I don't know yet. And in the old days, we used to take those in teen magazines. Do you love this boy?
Yeah, I remember that. Absolutely.
So
You're
I
dating us
just,
now.
yes, yes, we're dating us, but we are women of wisdom. So how do we get our wisdom, right?
Mhm. Mhm. From a
Anyway,
teen.
so yeah, exactly. So in that moment, what happened was I was taking those 33 questions
Mhm.
and going as fast as I could without thinking, just letting my inner self come out and answer
Yeah.
them. And out of the 33 questions, I only answered 3 with a question mark. The rest of them were all yes.
Okay. And so what did
And
that tell you?
pretty devastating. It told me that that label was exactly what had happened to me growing up. And that book became my greatest friend and my greatest nemesis at the same time.
And it forced you to look at things you weren't quite ready to look at?
Well, no, what it did was it looked into my life. So what happens is when you read a book like that, it like looks into your life and you're reading it going, oh my gosh, this person had a fly on the wall and they've written my life.
Yep.
And that's extremely unsettling because you think you're unique and you're not.
Well, we are. Everybody's unique. There's something a little different about us. But yeah, no, I get
Yes,
it.
yes,
You're
yes.
like,
And the
you're
and
like us, right?
exactly there, exactly. So you're unique, yes, as a divine aspect, uh, all expressing ourselves differently. But in the fact of having been raised by a narcissist, I wasn't it because it was like it's just a pattern that it follows.
Yep.
So for me, realizing I already knew I was highly sensitive, but realizing that there was a person who had shaped my need to seek validation of others. And
Yes.
that it was just like dominoes. It's like once that first domino hit, it just went all the way through my life. And it can be devastating in relationships. And for those women out there that are really listening and really paying attention to this, you might currently be in a relationship where you feel like you have to ask permission for everything. And if he doesn't treat you a certain way, then you're like, what am I doing wrong? Am I not sexy enough? Do I weigh too much? Is my hair not right? And like Diana was saying, it's really not about you, but it is about you. That's the most complex statement because it's about them. It's about the way they're treating you, and it's about the way you're allowing it. So I'm going to segue back into what you were saying about that need for validation. And so for me, it wasn't so much the need for validation. That's one side of the coin.
Right.
The other side of the coin was the desire to be accepted. And if I just did these things, then I would be accepted.
But did you really? Did you really feel like you were accepted when you were doing those things?
For maybe 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Maybe
right.
Until they, went on to their next game. And then for those women that are really struggling out there, it's called the cycle of abuse. So like you, I was looking for answers, and I sat down at my computer and I heard the words in my head, cycle of abuse, which I'd never heard before. So I typed it in, and there was a chart about how that works. It was just a circle, the building and the honeymoon and the explosion. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's totally how my life has been on the receiving end.
Relate to that. Just, and there's words out there too, as we're definitely not into labels. I don't label myself as a people pleaser. But I could certainly recognize those traits in myself. I've been taking care of others from the time I was probably 6 years old.
Wow.
If not younger, between my mother, my sister, my brother, my father, my husband, my children, people at work. I was always there to please them because I didn't want them to reject me. Like you said, it's either accept me or don't reject me, right? And for me, it was don't reject me. Let me do all this so you don't reject me. And so, yeah, I definitely get what you mean when you say that, your parents, they certainly formed who we are.
Yeah, exactly. So my pivotal point was that, and the therapist told me that, and I started reading that book. It's like, well, do I want to allow myself to be, here's the B word, the victim of circumstance? Or do I want to transform myself? And so I couldn't live with seeking validation from everyone, and not validating myself. So there's a little B word called boundaries. Absolutely. And so I started learning about boundaries.
Yes.
And the biggest thing that I learned about boundaries is if you can't fill in your own space with self-love, then it's impossible, in my humble opinion, to draw boundaries. Because when you love yourself, what I found is as I expanded, I was like a balloon, and I wasn't taking up much space. And the more space that I took up, the more that other people didn't like it, because I'd been in this teeny tiny space. And so, okay, so now I'm a balloon, and I used to be 1 inch. Now I'm 2 or 3 inches. And people are like, no, wait, we liked you better where you were. And so then becoming strong enough to say, this is the space I now occupy, get out.
Exactly. And that's to me, is where self-love comes in, because if you don't have that for yourself, like we were talking earlier, things just are harder. Things are just so much harder. And and the more you, like I said, the more you have self-love you have for yourself, the less you need the validation from outside sources. And so I believe it's like the foundation of everything that's good is by loving yourself first. It truly does make things good on the outside. I don't know.
Yes.
How do you feel?
Yes. And actually, I just got cold chills.
Oh,
those tinglies,
yeah,
those validation tinglies. Well, so I'm going to switch the subject just a little bit. So we've been talking about ourselves and how we discovered things, which is huge. You read a book, I read a book, and it just opened up a huge amount of discovery. So people listening today, whether you're listening on podcast later or recording, you also might be experiencing some things and having some aha moments. And we would absolutely love to hear from you. So here on Facebook down below, you can write in the comments. And on the other platforms, we'll have a way for you to reach out to us so that you can send us an email or, reach out, because both of us have taken our pain, if you will, and turned it into victory, if you will. I don't like that word victory because I don't feel totally victorious because I'm constantly growing and changing, but we are down that path a little bit more. And both of us are lights in an otherwise dark area. And if you've had that pain, if you've had those emotions and you're like, oh my gosh, I can so relate, then we want to hear from you, because both of us have brought that into public awareness. We have not only just worked on ourselves in our own homes, but we're reaching out to you, all of you ladies and a few good men that have experienced this, or you don't feel good enough, where you need that validation, where you're just seeking it all the time and you're like, I don't like this life. Then we have our own coaching businesses. And again, we'll put our information out for you so you can get a hold of us and schedule a time where you can get together and talk to us about it. And we will start that light for you so that you can walk your own path. That's the most important thing is, I can clear energy and fix you, cough, cough, but it's about fixing yourself. It's about taking the wisdom that we both bring, because we both have different angles and aspects. And you can come down this trail with us and live a much happier life. I don't know about you, Diana, but when I first started drawing boundaries and not needing validation, I picked 2 letters in the English alphabet and I put them on one letter on the palm of my hand. And the first one was N and the other one was O. So I no.
Yep. No is a full sentence. Not comfortable all the time to say it, but it is a full sentence.
Mm-hmm. And when you're seeking validation from others, in your experience, when you tell somebody no as a complete sentence and you just, that's it, what do you do with that vacant space in the room?
You just have to power through it. I mean, you really do, because silence, they say silence is golden, and it's at specific moments it's golden, and that's a perfect one. If you just say no and then just, yeah, it's hard, and they may come back and you may want to try and fill the silence, but try and keep it as much as you can. And if you can't, just come up with something, right? What would you suggest? No.
The first few times I said no, I made the mistake. In our age dynamic, women were taught to be soft and polite and say yes to everything. And when we said no, we had to follow it by, I'm sorry.
Yeah, oh my goodness gracious, yes.
And I got to thinking about that, and I'm like, am I really sorry? No, not really.
Yeah. No, it doesn't fit into my schedule. No, I just can't take that on. I mean, I've been practicing that lately because, as well as I do, you get a lot of people in our DMs that are trying to offer us things, and if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. So no, thank you. I can't fit that in my plate right now. No, thank you. I appreciate the offer. You can do it in a nice way if no alone doesn't feel comfortable. But whatever you do, do not apologize for saying no.
Yeah, I think that was one of my first boundary tests.
Yeah.
Was to say no and mean it. And especially, I'm going to get a little controversial here, especially with some of the men in my life. They were used to me saying yes to pretty much everything. And it was like, no. And then then you got the pushback. Well, how come? Why not? I really need this done. Great. Good for you. Take care of it. And that was a bit of a challenge too, because then when you begin to say no without apology, you adopt a new nickname, which is Biznatch. And that's what I found in business is when you're dealing with business, you're really into that masculine side of yourself and you're conducting business and it's facts and it's black and white and it's yes and no. And when you step into the fullness of that and you begin to do it, it does have wear and tear on your body because you're feminine, you know, and you're not used to that, or at least I wasn't used to that masculine slot. And so when I begin to say no means no, and especially in a room full of men, then they had their own agenda. They wanted me to do their own things. And it's, you know, it's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then they begin to question you. And the challenge, ladies, hear me loud and proud. The challenge is if you say no or no thank you, and a person, any person begins to question you, if you give reasons as to why you're not doing it, they will take those reasons, pick them apart, and turn them on you to make you do what they want.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Diana has a fantastic point, which no means simply no.
Yep. Yeah. And again, it's just like anything else, any new habit you're trying to build, it takes practice. It's going to be uncomfortable at first, but the more you practice, the better it is. And it, you know, and there's nothing wrong too with someone coming to you and you don't have to answer right away either. You can take time for yourself and just say, let me get back to you, or let me check my schedule. And then you can take the time to prepare yourself to say no.
I like that because a lot of times, especially in, you know, abusive relationships, you're trying to protect yourself. So if somebody was asking me something and I'm going to say no to it, it's like I feel like I have to instantly say no to cut it at the quick, because otherwise I won't be able to draw that boundary. And it's not true. Like you said, just take some time to think about it, because maybe no doesn't totally mean no for you.
Right.
Maybe no means, you know, I've got a lot on my plate. I'm unable to do this right now. However, in 3 or 4 days, weeks, hours, whatever, I'll have a little time slot and I can do this much. If that's something that you're accepting, great. If not, the answer's no.
Yep. 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 And like, again, it just takes practice.
Yes. And please, if anybody out there is practicing saying no and you're not really good at it at first, please don't beat yourself up. Don't take that ugly stick out and beat yourself up. Because I still get caught with it every once in a while. You know, I get caught in a moment, you could say, off guard. I had somebody the other day that was somebody I should have said no to right away. And it's like they just kept talking to me and luring me down the primrose path until I was nodding my head yes, like in sales. You know, they tell you nod your head yes and the other people will do it. And then afterwards I was like, oh, I can't believe I just did that. You know what? Then I could dissect it. What was it that they said? What was it that it got me to make me think or get my head to nod or whatever that I really didn't want?
Yep.
So it's just practice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know, and the same can be said when it comes to you asking for help from somebody, right? So, you know, if you flip the script, I know, I don't know about you, but asking for help was always one of the hardest things for me to do, because it made me feel like I couldn't do it all, right? Because in that perfectionist mind that I had, I'm like, oh, I can do it all. Jeez.
Yo ho!
But now I ask for help, and you know, if I can't do it, I'm not going to sacrifice my mental health because I'm feel like I have to do it all. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody can do that. Nobody can do it all. So same thing. If it comes to you're just taking on too much and you're overwhelmed, ask for help. Just ask for help. If they say no, it's about them. It's not about you, right? Because if you're saying no, it's about you, not them. So it's the same from that side. So don't take it personally.
And when you said flip the script, sometimes when I ask for help, it's not about them. It's about me not asking the person who's most perfect to help me.
Oh.
You know, because if I ask one person for help and they say no, and I'm like, rah, 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 you know, then what I've found is that I will ask someone else, and I keep asking until somebody says yes, but it turns out to be the best thing ever. So, you know, just be going forward in people's lives, be careful who you ask for help too. You know, do you trust them in that area? And that's a huge issue for people recovering from abusive relationships, because you trusted yourself in that relationship, or maybe to get in that relationship. So how can you trust yourself for asking for help?
Right.
And the biggest thing for me to overcome is when I asked for help, I just asked for help, period, from anybody that would listen to me. Help, 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 help. And nobody helped me because they didn't know how.
Right.
And that was a big challenge too, because then you feel you're okay. Well, everybody says ask for help when you need it. And then you ask for help when you need it, and then nobody helps you. So I asked for help. Why? So
Because you have
sometimes
more time
people
for you
don't.
to take care of yourself.
There you go. Exactly. But sometimes people just they don't know what to say. They don't know how to help you, that kind of thing. And they'll give you the typical placation. Oh, it'll be okay. Things will always work out, all that stuff. So be aware of that and
Yep.
find the person that you resonate with. And then, don't wear them out, because sometimes you get that good friend that they're there for you all the time. And then, you're doing nothing but dumping on them all the time. So
Mhm.
have a few friends, or develop a few friends. That's
Yep.
what I would say.
And journaling is a great way to help you identify who those people are.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, that's great. And then you can dump to yourself.
Yes. Anytime you can dump it out, it's so much better. Even just getting it out on black and white.
Hmm.
Out on
That's
paper,
true.
out on paper or on your computer or whatever.
Yep. I like to, if people physically are able to write, I like them to write pen to paper, because there's so many more nerves that are stimulated in that writing. All right.
Yep.
Well, I'm looking down here in the feed on Facebook Live today. I'm not seeing any questions. The desired outcome as we go on is to have people ask questions. We're going to talk about some very juicy topics and get people to jump in and ask their questions. So I know that this is our inaugural podcast live. And
Mhm.
so it might take a while for people to build up in listening, but that's what we're asking for, is for people to ask us questions, the hard to answer questions about being highly sensitive or empathic, so that
Mhm.
we can be here for you
Yep.
in a community. Because I have not yet seen, although there's so much available on the internet, you know, this style of asking, this style of two, women coming together in community and asking others to join us on our lives. You can certainly click like or follow, and then we'll put the announcement up for, the next time we're going to be doing this kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, so as far as we have scheduled right now, we're going to meet again on May 17th, and that is a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll meet Wonderful Wednesday for two wonderful, witty women.
Oh, love that. Love that. Witty women. Maybe that's what we call our little podcast. Two witty women.
Two witty women. I got it down. Let's put that down. Two witty women.
Two witty women. Yeah. I like it.
I like it too. Anyway, 8 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, which will be 10 o'clock Eastern Time in the morning. And if you have any questions, again, go ahead and put them down here below in Facebook. Just put them down, and then we can talk about them next time. But the desired outcome is to share these things with you all. And then both of us have our own practices, and we've worked with clients, and we've seen their struggles, and then we've seen their successes. And so that's what we're going to be doing, is talking about that. So maybe you can find yourself in this.
Mm.
All right. And then Diana, why don't you talk a little bit just more about the business offerings that you have currently, and maybe where people can find you.
Well, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Bless Your Sensitive Soul. And so you can find me on Instagram there. I am on Facebook under Diana Himes. I also have a website, dianahimes.com. And right now I do have openings available for a free breakthrough session. So if you're struggling with something right now, regardless of how big or small it is, let's jump on a call and talk through it and find a solution together. So
Well,
yeah.
that's fantastic. Woohoo! I love it. Yeah, that's nice to have that breakthrough call, especially for people that don't know us, or maybe they're just a little tentative. And that way they can get in there, dump things out, be heard. That's a big
Yes,
one, especially for
absolutely.
women. We like to be heard
And understood.
and understood. And I'm going to look to see. See if we've got any comments down here below, and I don't see anybody with a comment this morning. But I do see that we do have some beautiful followers that have joined us first thing. So again, if you are joining us later and wondering what these two witty women are doing, is we're sharing our sage wisdom. We've both been on the planet a number of years. We've worked through being highly sensitive. We are working through being empathic every day, and we're always learning. And we're looking for topics. So if there's something you want to know about, I mean, ask us a question. You know, case histories are always good to look at. But we'll be back again here live on Facebook on Wednesday, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And then the replay, of course, will be available. And then 10 o'clock on the Eastern, 10 a.m. in the morning on the Eastern Time. So I hope you all tune in. Diana, did you have any last words of wisdom until we meet on Wednesday?
Thank you, everyone, for coming on and this is joining us on our inauguration session, right? Inaugural session, is that how they say it? Where it's like the first one.
Dun, dun. The inaugural.
Appreciate y'all being here, and I can't wait to see you again.
Absolutely. And so look forward to if what we're going to do is we're always going to have a topic. We'll talk about the topic. We'll talk about some of our personal experiences, and then we're going to bring in case histories. And when we're on the lives, if people have questions, they can put them down below. And like I said, today, if you have questions later, just put them down and we'll pick them up on Wednesday. So anyway, everybody, big hugs and kisses to you all. It's a beautiful time of transformation. So many things going on in the world, and it's a time really to stay and be with yourself, love yourself, and learn that self-love and some safe boundaries. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Bye, everybody.
Bye.